right. Good morning, Benton Harbor. Good morning. Good morning. Today is Monday, October 31st, 2022. This is the day that the Lord has made. We shall rejoice and be glad in it. We're excited to be here for another day of Chat with the Chief. I'm Director Dan McGinnis with the Benton Harbor Department of Public Safety. And I'm super excited. I'm like a kid in a candy store with our guest today, which is Miss Ashley Hines.
Good morning, everyone.
Wonderful smile. Miss Ashley Hines is with the Benton Harbor Community Development Corporation. She is a young upcoming leader in this community, a rock star. So we're gonna get in there and talk about some of the things that she's doing. So good morning, Miss Hines. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Yeah, good morning. I'm glad that I finally got a chance to do this. I know we've been talking about it for a while, so I'm glad that I finally made it.
Excellent. Real quick, Benton Harbor again. Good morning. We're here this morning for another Monday. Last week, Monday, we had a decent show. But after the show, we had an incident, a fire that we responded to. We had a great response. I mean, we had a great response, and we had a great, at the time, save, but the woman didn't ultimately make it. So our prayers go out to them. I know the funeral, I think, is this week. Um, so, those are some things that happened. This weekend was not terrible for us, but around the county, there were some issues that happened as far as some things, and some things kind of touched the city. But overall, I think things are going well. Again, I got a great group of guys, probably the best cops in Barron County, no doubt about that. So even short, I love it. My guys, we don't make excuses. We still do the job. We get it done. Doesn't matter if we got full staff or if we're down by half. We are Benton Harbor, and we do what we do. So, with that being said, I'm still kind of amazed that this is what now. We started Chat with the Chief back in April, and it's been going strong and it's been growing. And actually, I'm out in the public, and people recognize me and speak to me that actually aren't Benton Harbor residents. So that's cool. So anyway, enough about me. It's Ashley Hines. I'm excited, and just like you have a wonderful persona, you got perfect teeth too. So I just want.
Thank you
So,
to Invisalign.
Miss Ashley Hines, you are born and raised Benton Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
You are a Benton Harbor resident. I want to talk about you and what you do. I also want to kind of talk about. I mentioned this a lot about the talented 10th. You are a perfect example of that. If we can kind of get into that too. I mean, you could be anywhere else in the world. You could be anywhere else on the West Coast. You could be anywhere, and you come home. So I want to kind of get into that. But let's start off with tell us a little bit about yourself. Again, you're born and raised Benton Harbor.
Yeah.
An athlete. So go
Mhm.
ahead.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Benton Harbor. Grew up an athlete. I ran track, played some other sports as well, basketball, volleyball, but track is, where was that for me? Got a college scholarship, attended Morgan State University. It's a historically Black college and university located in Baltimore, which is where I spent the past almost 16 years of my life.
Ooh.
Yeah. And so about during that time, I worked in fundraising for a medical school. That's where I spent the bulk of my career. And I told this story last week on the panel that I spoke at about, there was this question of, how we got into the work that we're doing now. And I feel like I kind of fell into it, so to speak. So just being a first generation college student, you're just kind of checking those boxes of kind of what you want to accomplish with your life. And part of that journey for me was home ownership. And so during that process in Baltimore, there were a lot of opportunities that were available to me as a first time home buyer that I was able to take advantage of, not just on the financial side, but also on the education side. And, it made me look at Benton Harbor, and there are a lot of, great things that are happening here. Like, we deserve to live in a great community. But it was this fear that a lot of the legacy residents they weren't able to take advantage of what was happening here, right? And so That's where the idea of the Ben Harbor CDC came about, with this idea that we will work with residents to ensure that there was some equity and ownership happening within the inner city, and people were able to take advantage of the great things that were happening here. And so that is what led me back on this journey back to Ben Harbor.
Okay. All right. So that's great. So let's slow down.
Hmm.
You just talked about 20 minutes of stuff.
You know, I'm
So,
to the point. You like, listen, let's get to it.
so yes, that's normally me. But there's some things I want to unpack
Hmm.
because I think that you serve as a inspiration to not just people in your cohort or people that you work with, but younger folks. So let's go back to high school experience. You were an athlete.
Hmm.
You ran track in college.
Hmm.
So, and of course, I'm a track coach, state championship in a track coach. I want to add, but anyway, I'm a track coach. So, how did you find your way to Morgan State? And the reason I want to go back and touch on this, because we've talked about before, Ashley, that I think there is one of the things that we have to do in our community is increase opportunity and programs for young women, young ladies. So, how can the next person at Benton Harbor High School or Berry Springs or whoever from Benton Harbor become the next Ashley? So kind of talk about your track experience, how that came about, and then how, hopefully we can have other people have the same experience to get an education, if to leave the community, and have opportunities outside of our area from athletics.
Yeah, I always say that, the way I ended up at Morgan was this divine intervention. I know that we talk a lot about historically Black colleges and universities now, but back when I made that decision, I didn't realize the magnitude of the decision that I was making for my life. Like, it really did change my life. And so, my senior year, it's one of the top athletes in the state, top of my class. I have this currently still have the school record in the 100 and 200 meter dash, at the Ben Harbor High School.
How many times?
Uh, 11.4 for the 100, and it was 23 something for the 200.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's time out for a second. Let's put this into perspective. Um, Boys would be happy to run 11.4.
Mm.
So on my state championship winning relay team, I had one of my pop off. He didn't even run 11.4.
Mm.
So that kind of puts in perspective. You were smoking. You running 23 200.
I was.
You were smoking. All right. So and I love how humble you are. You are such a sweet person. So you just kind of glossed over. Yeah, I got the school record, and yeah, I ran it 11.4. That's important. And again, Ashley, there's other girls out there that can be the next or be the next themselves.
Hmm.
But that's what we want them to hear. Like there's a possibility. Some people might not necessarily have the, all A's type of kind of makeup, but maybe decent grades and athletic ability can help get them into college. And that's really one of my goals on the work towards in the future is how can we get more of our young boys and girls into college, which of course is another topic, a little different from what you do, but that's
Yeah.
huge. That's
Yeah.
huge. So,
And that's a good point, because even with sports and like not necessarily being like this A student, right, there are just so it is a conversation for another day, but there are other opportunities where, because we can kind of go back and forth about standardized testing and public
yes.
school system, and why our kids are traditional, or a lot of our kids, or kids in general, are made to feel as if they aren't smart, and then they go on to these universities who give them a chance, and then they excel there. So I know countless of examples of that, but again, that is another show.
So
Yeah.
you got to Morgan State, which again is a
Yeah.
historically Black college. That's in Baltimore, Maryland.
Yeah,
Uh,
and actually, I ended up at Morgan because Maurice Burton, Trooper Burton, he is a Morgan alum, and he was the men's track coach at the time. Also, he's my godfather. And my senior year, I was killing it. I had a really good season, and but I had no serious offers, and that's why I feel like it was divine intervention, because I know that I would have gone to a lot of these larger schools, that were, I guess, more well known if I didn't have the opportunity to go to Morgan. And so, he went to school with Morgan's track coach. And this is why I'm so into community and the power of relationships,
Okay.
because he was able to call the track coach at Morgan and say, hey, I had this kid. And I didn't have to send any tapes to Tim Morgan. I didn't have to
Mm.
run for the coach. It was really off the strength of the relationship of these old friends, and he trusted his word for it. And luckily, for Coach Hodge, it worked out. But that is really how I ended up at Morgan. And then right after I signed, that's when I started to get the calls from the Michigan States and all of these larger schools, and they're like, oh, we don't see that you're signing. Like, no, I committed already. And so I know that if that had happened beforehand, I would not have made the decision that really like changed my life dramatically.
So, again, you are so wonderful to talk to. So, again, that is something that's significant, and I think, in essence, that's what you and I are trying to build, is that network of folks that will, bringing it back to Ben Harbor, be able to affect positive change in our community. And we talk about, now we're going to have you in a little bit talk about the holistic approach, but holistically, or the big picture, if you will, for me, it's not just police work and fire service or code compliance. I think for you, it's not just the numbers of getting people in homes, but that those efforts create and contribute to the overall success of the community. And if we
Mm-hmm.
don't take a bigger kind of a macro approach, and for example, we said before many times, we can't get crime down simply by arresting people and throwing cops at them. It
Mm-hmm.
takes neighborhood block clubs. It takes people like you that step up to be the next leaders. It takes people who want to communicate and help clean up their community. So it's those things. But in that is those relationships where people have the ability to pick up the phone, or these days send an email and say, "Hey, I got this great kid here," or "Hey, I got this young lady who's a dynamic leader, who's got a great program," and then get them audience in front of the people that they need to see in order to help them become successful. And I think we probably haven't looked at it that way, but I think that's at the core of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's this ecosystem approach. Like, we can't just, because what we're fighting here as a community, and as a race, is these very systemic issues. And so we did not get here by one thing, right? And so as you treat um, crime prevention, or I'm working in housing, we, you mentioned this before, the holistic approach. And we had to take that because it wasn't just about getting people housed, it was about creating healthy, whole communities and people to live in those communities. And these people need other things, right? Like, shelter is just a part of what people need, but how are we giving, like, how do we realistically get them shelters, right? Like, how do we increase, workforce development, industry recruitment to this area, mental health? There's just so many other things that we have to tackle as a community, and being intentional how we make time to address these needs for people.
So absolutely. So actually, let me ask you. Um, so you leave Ben Harbor, you go to Baltimore, Maryland. It's about
Hmm.
what, 5, 4, 5, 6 states away.
Hmm.
You become established there. You said you spent 16 years of your life there.
Hmm.
So precious, because you look like you're barely older than 16. So you spent a lot of time of your life there. You had a home there.
Hmm.
So you built your life there.
Yeah.
So talk about that, and then what was it, or when was it when you're like, okay, this is great, because Baltimore, I'm sure, has all type of amenities. I can imagine it's probably a terrific town. To go
Hmm.
from Baltimore to come back to Benton Harbor to do what you're doing. So that kind of gets back into that talented tenth. E.B. Du Bois in his book, The Talented Tenth, where black people would leave communities, go to college, or go get a trade, bring those things back to the community from which they came to try to enhance the African American community and grow. And we saw prior to, of course, some things happening, the Tulsas, the Rosewoods, the communities that they actually worked. So talk about that. I'm always talking about people leaving, coming back, but what was it that was so important for you to really kind of forsake having, a wonderful, you'd be equally successful in Baltimore and coming here? I mean, you bought your own house, you own a house there, so
Hmm.
you were established. So walk us through your thought process of I could do better at home than maybe sit here and kind of enjoy the good life.
Yeah.
That sounded terrible, but you know what I mean.
I get what you mean. Yeah, like I mean, my life was great, and it still is. I will say I'm going to preface this by saying that I had no like, it was never in my plan to move back to Ben Harbor, right?
My
I talk
wife.
about this often is that a lot of times there's this notion that in order to do well, you have to leave the city of Ben Harbor. And being here, I moved back full time finally earlier this year, at the beginning of the summer. And so I had this really amazing experience there, experiencing the city as an older woman. um, just things that like you kind of take for granted when you're younger, and it's like we
Yep.
have so much beauty and opportunity in our community, and then the people there are just amazing. So, but going back to what you asked, I did not think that I would ever move back to Ben Harbor, right? And so, um, yeah, during the pandemic, it really helped me to figure out what was important to me. I think that, um, spending a lot of time alone and just being very clear on the fact that, I knew that I didn't want to go back to my office and doing what I was doing. I had an amazing career. I was doing really well, but that wasn't it for me. And I had always had this idea to build a CDC back home, to build this housing organization, because for me, I feel like a lot of barrier for people as it relates to home ownership is the education piece and not realizing how it is accessible to a lot of people. And so wanting to bring that programming back to Ben Harbor, um, and I actually started planning for the CDC prior to the pandemic happening. There was another classmate of mine who I had been telling her about this concept. We graduated high school together. She lives in Atlanta, and she's like, I want to help you with it. And so we had been meeting and planning to launch this prior to the pandemic happening. And then once this happened in March, we just kind of put a break on things, not really knowing what this would look like and that everything will be virtual and we could operate it anyway. And so just taking some time to really be clear on that, because even when we were conceptualizing this idea, it was never with this notion that I would have to move back home, right? And so, it's like I'm in a community build from Baltimore. um, yeah, and so yeah, so
Mm.
it just kept like eating at me, like, you have to do this, you have to do this. And so towards the end of 2020, around August, I'm like, I have to do this. And it was like a light bulb, like in order to do this, you have to move back home. And so that's kind of when I started to lay this groundwork and this planning for like how I make this transition back. And I know that this is just a mission centered work because God led me back home to do this. This was not any plan of mine. It was, it's definitely not to this capacity, right? And so I was, as soon as I said that, you have to move home to do it, there was just this peace, like I was so sure of the decision the whole time. And that's why I know that, this was not by anything that we talk all the time, like we're Aquarius. We think, we're gonna like figure out every little thing detail. But for me, that piece was something that was just like something that I didn't even have to think about. I didn't have to debate it or talk to my friends or family. It got to one point, I was spending more time because I was still working remotely during the pandemic, and I was just always in Ben Harbor, building and doing our work. And so I was able to spend extended period of times here. It got to the point where, no one knew where I lived then. Like my friends in Baltimore were like, Ashley, where are you? Like, did you move back home? Because, I didn't, do my usual thing where I consult people and, I make my own decisions, but I always try to, well, what do you think about this? Or this is what I'm thinking. I didn't ask anyone anything. And the people who were in Ben Harbor who are a part of my life, they were like questioning, like, what are you doing? Like, once they figured it, like, are you sure this is what you're gonna do? Like, oh, you're gonna move back? It was more so this like questioning thing. But my friends in Baltimore who knew me, they didn't even question it because they knew it was a done deal then. So yeah.
So what did you get your degree in? And then
Yeah.
it's different from what you're doing now.
So my degree is in family and consumer science, which is essentially like home economics. So a lot of the things that I thought I was going to be a buyer in the fashion industry, move to New York and do all these glamorous things. But the basis of that is, marketing, branding, business, but also nutrition. Um, it really goes into like the family structure, consumerism. So a lot of the things that I have been able to do like within my volunteer work and how we're building the CDC is very much tied to the things that I learned in school.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So let's jump into and we've mentioned it. Ben Harbor Community Development Corporation, the CDC. That is the organization that you have started. So talk about what the CDC is, what its goals and objectives are in the community.
All right. Sorry, I'm looking at the comments. I see Shaquille talking about his partner in crime. He's going to be good today. You better, okay? Um, so the Benton Harbor CDC, we are a community development corporation who takes a people-centered, holistic approach into how we develop the community and really empowering residents to take some ownership in the process as well. I always say, like we're not a community service group, we're a community liberation group. And in order for that to happen, like people have to be a part of the process, like this collective work and responsibility that we all have to this collective work and responsibility that we have to make our community a better place. And so our flagship program is our home buying education and counseling program. And so that program teaches the entire ins and outs of the home buying process, how to pick your team, some of the fees that are associated with that. We also do what we call home buying hangouts, which are smaller 1-hour classes that we do in partnership with Olivia Nichols from Sturgis Bank that has an intensive focus on a specific area of home ownership. So maybe one class will talk about credit, and then one of budgeting, debt to income ratio, things of that nature. And then through that program, as we started to do our work and get people ready, we realized there was a lack of housing stock throughout the community. And so, we were getting people ready, and they would have to buy in other communities because there just weren't a lot of options in the city of Benton Harbor. And so now we've moved into our rehab portion of our work, revitalizing blighted properties, and also working on some other development projects as well. I'll wait to kind of speak on those things. But so in addition to housing, then we also have community support services. And that's where I know that you speak about 400 Black a lot on this show, but that's our mentoring program for young men ages 10 to 17. And that really grew out of a lot of our programming. We formulate based on community needs. So we do a lot of boots on the ground work. And that was one of the programs that right after we started to talk about the CDC, December 2020, there were a number of young boys in our community becoming victims of gun violence. And so the CDC hosted a meeting for men in the community that was led by Nick to talk about this issue and to figure out some viable solutions on how it can be addressed. And that program was one of the things that grew out of that meeting. And so that is headed by Nick Blue, Jay McCree, and Kevin Moore. And they do a lot of experiential learning. A lot of their background is in mental health. And so it's really interesting to see how they implement that work into how they develop our kids. And so I'm really, really proud of them and for the work that they're doing there. So hopefully Nick can come on and talk a little bit more about that. But it really is great to see Um, yeah, and then we also have a community garden located on Broadway. It's called the Flourish Community Garden. This is our first. This past summer was our first season, which went really really well. And then we recently purchased the home that's next to our garden that we're working to rehab, and that'll be a community house. So tutoring services, showers for people who may use it needed, laundry, business center for people who may need to use computers, printing. Community groups will be able to use it, and so really excited about launching that next year.
So that's tremendous. Those are some tremendous things. So let me ask you. So for your home buying program, that educational program, how do you get the people that you help? I guess A and B. How can they contact you? Anyone out there who will see Chapter Chief, moving forward, get in contact with you or understand that process to get into that if they want to get their home or get a home.
Yeah.
And you're right, we have a huge problem in Ben Harbor. We're 70-some% rentals. There's not an opportunity, and this is good for our people. So
Mhm.
how they get in contact with you, and how does that process work as you're walking them through?
Yeah, so right now the best way to contact, we're working on getting our website back up. That's a traumatizing experience for me, but we're working on getting that back up. But in the meantime, you can find us on Facebook. So it's facebook.com/Benton Harbor CDC, or you can just type in Benton Harbor Community Development Corporation, and all of our events are there. So not just with the 400 Black mentoring program. So if you have a young man that you're looking to sign up for that program, we have an open enrollment happening right now, so you'll be able to sign them up. It's just for young men. We do have a summer camp that we do with that group that includes young women as well, but again, that's only in the summer. Um, any of our events you'll be able to find on that page. And so for the home buying class, we have one coming up in a couple weeks, and so we'll be posting that information soon. But we just have an Eventbrite link. People sign up for the courses, and then after class, they'll have the opportunity to fill out an intake in order to meet with us one-on-one. So we kind of get all in your business then to really assess where you are in that process. So we'll help you create a budget, be able to look at your credit report to see, if you do X, Y, and Z, then this is, then you should be in good shape, and just kind of work with them throughout their time to get them to their journey. And a lot of times we see that when people come to our class, they're already in position to buy a home, and they don't realize it until they actually come to the class, and they find out this information. And then Olivia is, like, as I mentioned, she works for Sturgis Bank. We're not necessarily tied to any one lender, but she's the one that we have a strong relationship with right now. She's really great, and we trust that we can send people to her. And so she's really great with working with people as well.
So it's good. So you have partnerships with institutions to help get people through. So
Mhm.
so let me ask you, for the home buyers, I th- have you, in your experience, is some of the drawbacks to or setbacks, at least in some of the people's mind, is they might not have the income or maybe the credit to get a house. So
Mhm.
you have anything that you help to rehabilitate them to get them to the point where they can be homeowners?
Yeah, we're really hands-on. So right now, as far as um, the credit, like we'll run their credit. We help with dispute letters. We give them a sample of that. Olivia's really great because she'll actually help send them for you, things like that. And we just hired a housing counselor on our team that's going to be very hands-on and helping people to kind of walk them through the process of, not just, oh, you don't have enough, your credit isn't high enough, but this is what you need to do to get it to where it needs to be. And so really taking an intentional and hands-on approach to how we're able to cater to people. And then the other part of that, is the income. We don't see that often, but the people that we have seen, like, we want to be able to create a pipeline to these other organizations. And I know we haven't gotten into that yet, but that's why the ecosystem is important, because there are other groups who are doing a lot of great work in workforce development. And sometimes with the income, it's that, like, our people, they're not filing their taxes properly. So they're not even claiming everything that they make because maybe they're trying to get a certain return, but really having to educate people, like, when you're buying a house, they're going to look at the last 2 years of your tax, you know,
Yes.
your tax filing. And so you need to, if you know that this is something that you want to do, like, you have to be legit in the things that you're doing. So a lot of times people in our community, they have their, they're entrepreneurs, they do hair and all of these different things, but they're not filing all the income that they're making, and so it's reflecting as if they're not making enough, but they really are. So it's that education piece has been really important.
So how do you get? So if you got somebody who, perfect example, does hair, does really well, they're probably booked from morning to evening, but they haven't reported that. So how do you build that for them so that they show a steady income or an income to go towards purchasing the house?
Yeah, so that's where we will kind of lean to more heavily on our lending partner for that, because they'll be able to tell them exactly from a funding perspective, because they have direct ties with the underwriting process. So they'll be able to know, like, either it's going to take some time to get you there, or if you can verify income by providing X, Y, and Z. So sometimes in the institutions, maybe based on people's credit score, things of that nature, they may have other processes that they can follow to get people to where they need to be, or to
Okay.
at least be able to verify certain things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So you also mentioned the community support piece. Talk about that. I know you got some programs that you work with, others that you help, because I think you're just that type of person. So you got programs within the CDC. You have other ones, and we've talked about putting together an alliance of these
Hmm.
organizations. Maybe under an umbrella, just simply to communicate and share resources. Um, so talk about some of those things, and I know also within the CDC you have the structure and some different, I guess, I don't know, boards. So talk
Hmm.
about, I know there's people that you're looking to get involved in different aspects of that. So talk about the community support piece and all the aspects to the CDC.
Yeah. With all the aspects of the CDC.
Best you can.
Yeah, and because a lot of these things are still forming, because we really respond. That's the uniqueness, and that's what keeps this work exciting, is that we're able to like, we don't answer to anyone, we answer to the community. So we're able to respond and build things based off what we assess to be the need. And so under the CDC, as I mentioned, for community support, we have 400 Black, and we do a lot of social cohesion work, and that is really just getting people to gather in healthy ways within their community to start building a special affinity to it. So we have a program called Real Community Outdoor Movie Nights. So if you attended any of the movie nights in Union Park throughout the summer, that was hosted by the Ben Harbor CDC in partnership with Let Us Rest, which is led by Delia Chandler as the executive director. We also launched a series called Communion. I'm a foodie, so any opportunity to gather to eat, I'm all for that. And so we host pop-up dinners in various neighborhoods, and invite the people who live in that neighborhood to discuss various topics. And so we provide the dinner. We facilitate the questions. We hosted three this year. One was in the Morton community, downtown at Dwight P. Mitchell, and then the one in Broadway Park. And we'll be looking to partner directly with residents for next summer, so that we can host for different people, and they can invite their neighbors. Um, so that's the CDC and how we currently support as far as programming. But a lot of the work that I do daily is building this ecosystem of people who are uh, really boots on the ground doing the work. And I guess also not really boots on the ground either, because there are a lot of larger organizations who have taken in to this work and really want to, we hold people to the things that they say that they want to do. So if you say that you want to be able to work with residents and help create equitable opportunity, I'm going to give you a space and the table to do that. But I'm also going to, hold you to the things that you say that you're going to do for this community. And so But yeah, we just kind of built this natural network that of people who have synergy around the work that we're doing. So, Present Pillars, I know James was on here a couple weeks ago. I mean, I'm just amazed by the work that they're doing and some of the ideas for the things that he's working on. I'm really excited for what that means. Not just for men in our community, but our entire community will benefit because of the things that they're building. It's just really dope. You know what I mean? And I'm excited to see how these things come to fruition. Delia Chandler from Let Us Rest, she does a lot of social cohesion work as well. Um, and a lot of our other partners are people who just, you know, we see a need or they see a need, and it's like I feel like a lot of times we have there's this notion that in order to support people, everyone has to be sitting at the same table. And for us, that doesn't necessarily look like we're all working on the same thing. Sometimes that means that if James needs me or Deidre Fields needs me, like we're pulling up, like what do you need for the things that you're doing for the people that you're serving? And so it's this alliance that's naturally growing based on the fact that we are all working towards a similar mission, and that is to deliver and to help our communities and to inspire other people to want to do that. And so remaining mission centered is really how this network has been growing. So it's not like we have this official thing that's happening. It really is that you see people who are doing genuinely meaningful work, and you want to support that and see how you can build upon that.
And that is tremendous. As the Bible says, iron sharpeneth iron, so too does the countenance of his friend. So, like you said, this network is kind of naturally kind of coming together. And I was blessed to be able to learn, first through James and ultimately, Nick and you, to kind of link up with you all, because again, we all have kind of the same goal for our community. And a lot of things that you're doing, although you got the housing thing, you're doing some economic things, your community support that the CDC is working with really is lockstep. I mean, we talked. It's we got almost the exact same ideas. It's like, this is perfect. But it's not reinvent the wheel. Let's come together. And there's a sharp young lady. I told you before, I'd love for you to be my boss. I work for you any day of the week. So you are a rock star. I thank the Lord for you firstly, but I thank your family, that they put into you, that you're here and that you have such strive. And of course, I don't want to sound like this is the Ashley Hines show, but you are a star in the things that you're doing. And real quickly, how are you paying for all this? How you got all these things going? How are you paying for all this? Let me make it a two-part question so you can kind of keep going. I'm going to cut you off. And then what type of relationship do you have with Benton Harbor and Benton Township? What if somebody says, well, they're doing the same thing that the city is doing or should be doing? What would you say to that? That's probably three questions, I guess. To try to dissect that best you can.
I'm like trying to write them down to make sure I touch all the points, because one of the things I didn't talk about was the committee. So hopefully we can go back to that as well. But
yeah,
you know, your first question was, how are you paying for everything? So our first year, we're coming up on year two. Actually, tomorrow was like our official filing date for the CDC, so I'm really excited about that. But last year we just really hit the ground running, and we didn't focus a lot on funding. So we did maybe a startup fundraiser and maybe raise like $3,000 or something like that. But a lot of it was just based off, volunteer support, or I would fund a lot of things. We did some events in partnership last year with Wilson Chandler. So he, gave some funding towards us, but we just did not focus a lot on funding. It was completely volunteer driven for almost really this whole time. I just hired staff. And so towards the end of last year, that's when we started to put more emphasis on fundraising and grant writing, because just really having to make time for that. We were I keep saying that we were trying to build the track while the train was already going, and so we just didn't have time to do that, because once we launched, it was like the need was so vast, and the things, like, we were just so excited. It was just like it started with just me, and there was this domino effect of people who were involved in the process, really that is that's one of the things that has touched me the most about this is that, we weren't paying people, and people really volunteered because they love this community and they wanted to see it do well. And a lot of the work that we've been able to do that's been able to get us in these doors that, are now creating more opportunity is because we just did the work. And so now we're seeing the fruits of that labor, and we're able to, we have some harvest for it, but that's not where we started. And so now we were able to apply for grants once we got our 501c3 status. And so we have gotten our grants from a number of sources. If you have a local nonprofit and you're doing some great work, I would definitely recommend looking up the Berrien Community Foundation, because they have a lot of the local foundation grants. So we've gotten a few of those from the Upton Foundation. We also are the fiscal sponsor for Present Pillars as they await their status as well. And so they've been able to get some funding from there and the state. I know that, we're working on a project with you, things. So just people kind of come to us and say like, hey, I had this grant opportunity, and we'll apply. And sometimes we get them, sometimes we don't, but we're going to apply for them. And, and just hope that we have favor in that. And so like right now I'm working on something that actually three grants that someone sent me that it's related to some environmental work, a lot of the community development work that we're working on too. And so people send them to me. Alexis Harris from I think it's Horizon Bank, she recently sent me a grant opportunity. And so just people just send them to me, and I make sure that we take advantage of. And so, and that's something that, we as this alliance, so to speak, would assist with. Like I review grants for some of the people that we're connected to, or we'll sit down, we'll have a, if you're applying for a grant, I will sit and I'm going to help you, or we'll tag team it in a Google Doc to make sure that, it's not for the CDC, but we're going to make sure we get something in for someone. So, reviewing proposals, things like that. Like we just do that for one another.
So, and you do a great job. And last week you had to kind of endure my process because I'm very fastidious as far
Yes.
as writing and applications. So that went really, really, really well. It was really a pleasure to be able to actually collaborate on a document, and we put something together in over the course of a day. So, and that's very positive. Anything I could do, obviously, to help you, because helping you helps me, helps us, our community.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm sorry to cut you off. I guess that kind of segue into, to people who say like what we're doing is essentially what the city should be doing, right? And the reality is that like it does not have to be, it is in this competition. Like we're all, if we're mission driven, we're all trying to work on the same thing. And the reality is with this current capacity, the city does not have the capacity to do a lot of these like smaller things, or to interact with people to the degree that we can. And so I think that I would like to look and see how this could be a structure where we're kind of feeling a need that the city does not have, as opposed to it being this thing where like we are in competition with the city, which I feel like for a lot of people, particularly in leadership, they may be seeing that to some degree. I could be wrong. That's kind of the vibe that I've gotten. So
well, I hope not. And one thing I would say, Ashley, on the chat with the chief, we have a tagline: some things just need to be said. So if you got to say something, kind of just say it. Because some people might be out there wondering, well, shoot, that's what the city should be doing, or at least be in partnership with. And I don't know that status. I keep that side of the building, and if it's not police, fire, co-compliance, it's not my pond. But at some point, or at least hopefully, you are working together in consort, because there's things that you do that may not necessarily be the scope for the city per se, but we all have a common goal. And like I said before, when we've talked, even if say, you have, or we've had, or I've had maybe a difference of opinion on certain topics, that should not negate the fact that, hey, you bring something great to the table overall. Let's work together. we can agree to disagree here, but on the overall mission, we do agree and work through that. And unfortunately, in our town, for a lot of people, it's like it's either 0 or 100. Either you agree with me and we're great, or you don't agree with me and I hate you. And it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that it's particularly, one as a woman and operating in this space, and then a young woman too. And so I think that we want to believe that a lot of the days of, you know, hierarchy and misogynistic behavior is over, but the reality is it's not. And so, um, but directing that specifically to the city, I feel as if there could be opportunity for a healthy partnership. Is that how it is now? No. I think that there are times where we have conversation, but it has not manifested in any way. But I'm hopeful for those things to change, and I think part of our work has shifted towards this. We respond to the things that are happening, and so we have to advocate for people in certain spaces. And so when things were happening with the city that just affected me in this organization, it wasn't such a big deal because I'm going to figure out how to maneuver through it, right? But now as we are growing and we're finding out more information and we're connecting more with people, people rely on us to be, to speak for them and to show up for them and offer information when they don't necessarily have all the tools to do that. And so some of the things that we've been working on as of late, particularly as it relates to people who own property in this city and having to advocate for them and push back, I think that creates a further strain on the relationship, because at the end of the day, like, we have to advocate for the people here. And if that means that it's going to be to the detriment of this relationship because people can't put that aside, then that, quite frankly, is how it's going to have to be, because we can't not advocate for people, right? Particularly when we talk about generational wealth building, how these things are important, there is this grave disenfranchisement of Black landowners that's currently happening in the city. And I don't think that is necessarily by intention, but it's definitely because of the lack of procedures and policy that is from a top-down approach. And we're going to hold people accountable to that. And so, that does not always make me favorable when we're trying to talk about other things. And so, that's not, I would like for there to be more relationship and synergy in our work, but right now that's just not how it is.
So, and I appreciate that your candor and your honesty, and kind of going back to how we started again with the talented tenth. Like, I don't want to be talking about this ad nauseum, but I think in our discussion, we've talked about, again, with you and Nick and James and others and Shaquille. Um, yeah, we want the talented people like you. Again, you are a rock star. Again, you got James, Cece, all these guys that are really the up and coming leaders of this community.
Mm-hmm.
And you come back to do the work. There has to be somebody like myself, an old codger like me, to help you, to open some doors, to give some guidance, to help. It's almost like an organization or an agency can't be effective if it doesn't have a process to continue on the work after the people are gone. So we
Mm-hmm.
have to have put in place, like here, we know when I go, Mike Clark's going to be the director. We have that continuity. It's already kind of set in stone, thank God, because we've done the work, he's done the work, and the work will go on and perpetuate. We have to, us older people, myself, Benny Bauer's on here, who's giving me the praise, to be able to say, hey, how can we help you? Because I was there where you were. I know what it's like coming to the community, and I came as an outsider, being from Grand Rapids. So you can imagine what that's like in this town. But now, for me, how can I help this effort? Not just you, but the Nick Blues and the James Gunthers and anyone else who has a heart for the city, has a program. Maybe they might need a little guidance. Maybe they need some help with a door being opened or crack open for them, or get them an audience in front of the right people. And that's what I pledge to do for you and people like you, whatever influence I have to help perpetuate the mission. It's not just my mission; it's all of ours. It don't even have to be my idea. I'm good with working with. I've always kind of been, I guess, rise to the top. I'm a very good Indian, if you will. I don't mind
Yeah.
being a person that can get this task and
Yeah,
off
I
off and
would
go
say
do
like,
that.
I'll be your Flavor Flav. Like I'll be your hype man. We can be your Mr. Bentley. Everybody can't be Diddy, but I'll hold the umbrella for you. So it's like, because like your people are doing important work, and I think that it's important to support and as in any way that they can, and that is have we talk about this a little bit with our group, because now that we're doing this work, we have seen some resistance from people. But the reality is, we have seen this overwhelming amount of support too. And those are the things that I choose to really focus in on, because if I worry about the other stuff, it's going to distract me from what I'm trying to do. But people have been waiting for this. People have been waiting for an organization like the CDC. They've been waiting for the present pillar. They've been waiting for ask you to talk to Chief so we can create this online. Like, these are the things that people want to see in their community. And we know that because the more that we're out there, the more people, they come on board the process, because people are tired of talking about it. It's like, let's be about it. And so
Right. Right.
me that it's been, I don't want to have a whole bunch of meetings about stuff, let's just do it then. And so it does make it difficult sometimes, because I tell James him all the time, like, the OGs, they don't OG like they used to, uh but I think that I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think that we are finding our people, and we're finding those OGs who genuinely want to help. And I think that one of the things that I learned in starting this, a lot of people that we identify to be the leaders and that are making things happen are not really the boots on the ground people who are actually affecting the change that's happening here. And so, once you start doing the work, you're going to see who's actually doing the work, and then those are the people who really have embraced us. I started this at the very beginnings, just showing so much deference to people, um, meeting with city officials, meeting with community advocates, and other people who had various programs, who were doing, to me, who I felt like were doing great things or identified as leaders. And for the most part, a lot of people just, accepted us. They were very excited about the work that we're doing. But I was intentional in doing that because, as someone who lived away, I didn't want to come in like, oh, you think you know everything, you're trying to fix everything, but really trying to create these true partnerships with people. But there were also some people who just refused to meet with us as well. Um, but deference is, I'm only going to show so much deference before, and this is me being the athlete, before you get pushed out of the way, right? So, yeah, I mean, the work is going to continue.
So this has been again great. I look forward to you coming on here. As you know, I'm a big supporter, and you got the chief in your pocket. He's basically wrapped around your finger. What kind of things can myself or the Ben Arbor Department of Public Safety do to help you in your mission? Because you're now helping me in mine with some of the things that we've talked about, things that we've got started. So, in your mind, how do we work to better closely be effective? And you said it, not just talking about doing it, but actually doing it.
Yeah. And I know that, everyone's busy, everyone has these things, but these types of conversation, these platforms and the meetings that we have, they're just so beneficial in ensuring there is synergy around what's happening and just staying in touch. And one of the things that we didn't talk about were the committees that the CDC is starting. So last year we we conducted an asset mapping project where we went around the Empire Corridor and really assessed what the true assets were of the community. So buildings, whether they are vacant and blighted, or businesses, the people that live there, what type of amenities, if any, um, organization services, things like that. And really using that, the idea behind asset mapping is that you would see what your community already has so that you could leverage those assets to start bringing other things in. And so earlier this year in the summer, we hosted part two of that, which is transformation beyond imagination, with this idea that we don't have to imagine the community we want, we can create that. And
Yep.
so, which brings me to those committees. And so one of those were is safe streets. And so at that meeting, people talked about, it was the charrette style meeting of, some of the high priority things in our community. And so some of those things were safe streets, um, housing development, commercial corridor redevelopment, um, what was the other one? Education and cultural affairs and special events. And so those are the 5 committees that the CDC is in the process of launching. We have people within our network who's already signed up to kind of lead these things forward, but now the next step will be, reaching out to the community to see which anchor institutions or people who are, community members who want to be a part of that process. And the idea is that if we say, or, if in doing our work and our research that we need to have CTE classes, or we need to work on industry recruitment, we need to build a Black Chamber of Commerce, we need to do a land trust, these groups will then start to do the actual legwork in order to start bringing these resources in. And so that's kind of how our relationship grows, because, as we talk about how we make our communities safer, that is a lens that I know how you, I have my ideas on how to do that. And it's not necessarily directly related to um, police work. You know, I think that as you build healthy people and give them access to different things, then you start to create the community that way. But having public
Absolutely.
safety involved in that process on the things that we create, that's just going to be a game changer for the work that we're doing, so that we have that education behind that. These are the things that work. These are the things that we should stay away from. And also being able to say to you guys, like, hey, this isn't working. You know what I mean? Maybe you need to try a different approach. And so just really keeping that line of communication open, because this is probably another show, but when we talk about the relationship between the community and the police, like, that is a very real thing for the Black community. So being able to mend some of these things, I think that as time goes on, that is what this work is going to be able to do.
That's tremendous. And you read my mind. So I'm like, we got to have a part two to this sometimes, because there's some stuff that we didn't get a chance to get into because you're doing work on the Empire Corridor. There's a ton of things. How this fits in with, like, say, Cornerstone Alliance. You mentioned a Chamber of Commerce. The city doesn't actually really have one. Cornerstone is it, but they kind of do their own thing.
Yeah, and we talk to we have a healthy relationship with Cornerstone, I should say. Very transparent in the way in which we operate on both sides. They were one of the, once they saw the work that we're doing, they reached out to us to, really, because we hadn't trashed them yet. We were just kind of doing what we did. And so, they extended the olive branch and we extended it back. And so, we do communicate with them. Christina and Rob, they've been really, great advocates of the work that we're doing and really supportive of that. And hopefully, one of the things that I was definitely a critic of Cornerstone, and everything is about mission, right? And so once I realized, like, what their mission was, that just made it more clear for me of the work that we have to do because of the mission that's important to us. And so we keep it open, still very critical, but also just ensuring that if people want to be at this table to create equitable solutions that are inclusive, at least giving them the opportunity to do that until they prove otherwise. So
that's tremendous. Again, we didn't even get a chance to talk about, we're trying to put together some forums for
Oh
some,
yeah. Well,
some
once we
history.
get them together, then we'll come back and talk about them.
There we go. There we
Yeah.
go. So, Ashley, this has been tremendous, and I hope to get you back on to continue this conversation. Again, you are a rock star. You're doing some great things, and anything that I could do to help you, you definitely you got me. So, I look forward to you growing and helping meet your mission. I'll be praying for coming working together hand in hand with the city and Cornerstone, because we all have really the same notion to have a bigger, better Benton Harbor, safer, beautification, and it's just tremendous. So I thank you much. We've been talking with Ashley Hines of the Benton Harbor Community Development Corporation, and again, you're a star, and keep doing it. Be
Yeah.
encouraged, keep doing the work, and you encourage me because in my mind, oh, there's help out there. These
Yeah.
young folks, we can
We are
pass the
here to
baton.
help. Yeah, we really do. The whole team, not just the CDC team, but like you said, you met with James. Like they're just a lot of young energy. Like use us. Like we really are committed to this, and so I'm just thankful for you for allowing me to come speak about our work and creating this platform. And I'm excited about what's next.
Well,
Yeah.
ma'am, we got it come to an end, unfortunately. So again, we'll get you back on here with the next maybe 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, how it works out. But again, I thank you much, and this has been a joy. And Benton Harbor, we thank you for being on. For those that have been on with us for Chat with the Chief, I know probably by this afternoon there'll be several hundred who have seen this. So we want to get the word out, especially for kind of going back Benton Harbor for the home ownership. There's anyone out there that maybe doesn't know they want to do it but don't know how to, you know, uh, connect with Ashley and the CDC, and they'll help you because the more people own, the better off that we are. So,
Mhm. I'll go back to the comments. I'll link our page and also tag our housing counselor in that as well.
yes,
So
that'd be perfect. All right. Well, again, Ashley, I appreciate it much. And Benton Harbor, we appreciate you for supporting Chat with the Chief. It's been humbling on how it's grown and influence that we've gained with people, and we want to continue that. And again, I want to do my part I love my city. This is a labor of love, as you know. I'm not here because I have to be; it's because I want to be. So with that being said, we're going to plug forward. I'm looking for, I'm very excited about 2023 because I think that there's a lot of things that are going to come together. A lot of things going
yeah,
to come to
short
fruition.
year.
Yeah, it is definitely going to be a good year. So, all right, man, let me shut up. Till next week, Ben Harbor. Oh, let me say next week, we are going to highlight, we've talked about the dumping in Ben Harbor. We're going to highlight that. We're going to have Rich Rappers will be on with us, and we're going to show you some photos and talk about so you can see for yourself the dumping situation in our city. So that'll be next week on Chat with the Chief. And until next week, Ben Harbor, we love you. Thank you. Be safe and be blessed.
Bye.